how do you see B2B sales cycles changing when an AI agent is the one doing, either that like vendor shortlisting, the feature comparison?
I do think buyers will be more informed. When SDRs, BDRs come in, it'll be further down the funnel and they probably have to be even more expert. So I do believe a lot of the inbound now will be handled, more by AI, BDR, SDR. So one cool thing about AI discovery versus search, the downside, everyone's getting less clicks. Less people click through on AI than on Google on the AI citations, but also they convert 9 times higher. And even content on YouTube, putting out more video, more content, and it has to be highly educational content. But the cool thing is now the LLMs also will train on YouTube, especially like Gemini, but like talking about your real use cases, how they're using your software, how they're having problems with it. Because then when the next person's prompting a question, then odds are the LLM is going to refer to you and your answer. You got more of its attention on that topic than anyone else. Getting into those online conversations are all great ways to increase your AI visibility and, ultimately have more buyers discover you through AI. And like I said, as a long tail solution, it's actually probably better than SEO was. In most startups, we are long tail, right? You want to pick some problem in some vertical, solve it better than any of the big incumbents. And so I do think it's very promising for entrepreneurs now to build brand with AEO.
Well, everybody, welcome back to the show. Today's guest is the CEO of G2, the #1 platform for B2B software reviews. We are excited to be joined today by Godard Abel. Godard, welcome to the show, my friend.
Yeah. Hi, Pete. Hi, Adam. Great to be here with you.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And Adam, what are 3 things people are going to learn if they stick around until the end of the show today?
Okay. If you stick around till the end of this show, you'll learn the tactical steps to move beyond SEO and master answer engine optimization, ensuring LLMs like ChatGPT and Perplexity actually recognize and recommend your brand during buyer's research phase. Number 2, you get the blueprint for retooling your website and data structure so you just don't rank. You become the preferred solution for AI agents that are increasingly handling the shortlisting buying process. And number 3, you'll discover how to leverage your agility as a startup to outposition incumbents in AI results, capturing high intent leads that are shifting away from traditional Google searches.
Heck yeah. Well, I think that's been like one of the most curious topics in our side of the world. And Godard, I know you're out there actually trying to make it happen for these brands. We have a ton of early stage founders and growth marketers in here. So
wait, before we jump in, can we just Godard's by far the most successful founder CEO we've had on the show yet. Does everybody know what G2 is? Can we just keep in the chat? Yes. Does everybody use G2? Does everybody actively have a process compiling reviews on G2? It is like Capterra, but I would like to say that Capterra is probably like G2. That's probably what Godard would say. You can't afford it. Jed, you can afford to have your own workflow sending people to G2 to leave your reviews because that doesn't cost anything. It costs money to run a campaign.
True.
But
no, for good point, it's free. You can start free.
Yeah.
And as Adam said, you can send reviews. You can be a leader for free. And that was honestly part of my mission when we started. I've always been an entrepreneur 25 years. And frankly, my first company, I remember, took 9 years to get a Gartner report, 12 years to be a leader. And obviously, G2, we wanted to be fair. And so you can start free and even be a leader free. Of course, we have paid marketing solutions that can help you more, but we're committed to that. I know a lot of your early stage, so definitely you can start free. And then, and that we'll get to it, but that will help your AI, AEO influence.
And I just, one of the most amazing things to me about the internet is that you can be working in your garage and you can create the perception that you are much larger than you are. In my opinion, the way to do that better than any other way is to amass more reviews than your competitors on these review sites. This social proof aspect is unbelievable. We managed to do it, Pete and I, at this newsletter. Like right when G2 came out, we had an email newsletter app called Robley Email Marketing. It only got to 3 million ARR. But until MailChimp got the joke, for 18 months, we had more reviews than MailChimp and Constant Contact. So we were able to hit everybody up and say, we are the biggest email marketing tool in America. And it was unbelievable for us, if you can imagine, right? Like it's the super commoditized space. It's been around forever. And we're sitting there in my apartment in Manhattan telling everyone we're the biggest. Now, at that 18-month mark, somebody from G2 got a hold of MailChimp. They did one campaign and they like 200x'd our reviews in a day. And so we kind of lost that, but we still stayed third for a long time. So
Can I tell a funny related story, Adam?
yeah, absolutely.
You know, our VP of marketing, Palmer Houchins, he was actually at MailChimp at that time.
I've had coffee with him in Austin.
And I think that's how he first heard of us.
Yeah.
But, so thank you for that. And I will say you're doing it again with our B2B.
Yeah,
79 reviews.
I just think it's super important. I mean, it's like one of these things that I think that you have to do in the early stage. Everything's working against you when you're an early stage startup. Every one of us has felt it. Trust is the most valuable thing in this review thing. It's just a really big deal. And it doesn't require, if you set up the workflow correctly, it doesn't require constant maintenance. You just bump people to leave you reviews, as part of your onboarding flow, in my opinion. I like capturing people at the maximum moment of excitement when they've fully activated the software and hit their wow moment. Then it's like, by the way, leave us a review on G2. And do you guys even give people incentive? Like you could give them a little whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Like an Amazon.
Yeah. You could, like, some people do swag, Amazon gift card. Yeah. Yeah. But you also can provide them a thank you gift.
Yeah. So that is my, Godard did not pay for this. I actually do these things. You can go look at any of my companies and they have more reviews than any of my competitors. Again, I think it's super important. And I love
you have a top 100 badge. I was just looking at your B2B reviews on G2, but you were like top 100.
Yeah, I need to get it on my website. That's just another.
It's on your G2 listing, but yes, you can put it on your website too. But that is kind of amazing, right? You already this year, one of the top 100 software products, and you're still pretty early in your journey too. I know you're growing fast, but no, but thank you. And I know you believe in it, but it is and like I said, start free. It's a great way to get validation. Like I said, I've been an entrepreneur 25 years. Gone 0 to 1, 0 to 10, now G2 0 to over 100 million. But like, I know early days, it's so hard to get people to trust you, as Adam said. And honestly, in like G2, we're just conveying the trust of really your customers and users. Like, because ideally also your customers, users sign up with their LinkedIn profile, and then people can find people in their LinkedIn network. They're like, oh yeah, I trust Adam. If he left a review, I'll trust his product. So it's that's exactly why we built it, to give buyers quicker confidence to try your innovative new tech.
Heck yeah. Well, I think this is a good pivot into where all of us are finding trust these days, maybe a little more than we should. We're trusting the robots. I also, just to clarify for the audience, when it comes to that G2 campaigns for RB2B, we were using the Amazon gift card incentives, and they worked so well. And you guys handle that whole workflow. Obviously, we have to load up and pay for those gift cards, but like, my gosh, does that make it easy for marketers and founders who frankly are too busy to be chasing down the reviews, but desperately need the reviews. So just wanted to call that out so people know kind of functionally how we got there. But okay, so let's get into this kind of AI recommendations. So I'm sure the audience and all of us have seen, like, when you start to ask certain questions to GPT or another LLM and you're doing your research, you get a lot of cited sources. And oftentimes those are like heavy user generated content. The reviews, I see a lot of Reddit threads, which I think is hard to influence as a marketer, but just kind of emphasizing the amount of like really like hardcore user generated conversation. I hate to even say content. I saw a stat about how high of a source G2 is cited on GPT. Can you dive into that? And then I saw it was like the fourth most cited thing in B2B software. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think even more exciting, this is analysis by SEMrush, but actually G2 is a top 20 cited web domain overall, like of all web domains, and there's billions of websites, as you know, but we're a top 20 domain cited by LLMs, according to SEMrush. And what's really exciting, I think we were actually one ahead of Instagram, which my kids would never believe. But it does show, and actually of the SEMrush analysis, we were the first B2B software focused site ranked of course, Reddit is number one overall. And I think the same reason the LLMs like to train on Reddit, they like to train on G2, they want real user human content. And I think the risk for LLMs, they kind of become an AI loop. You know what I mean? If the AI is trained on AI content, then like it becomes meaningless
B
gibberish.
minus sludge is like the whole world, right? Like
Exactly. Or the whole world blows up. I don't know. It's like, but so they want to train on real user generated content, and they do look at the trust of certain domains. And that's obviously one advantage the G2 domain has. We've been around over a decade now. We have obviously leading traffic. And so also the LMs have noticed that, and they will tend to look at the content on G2 and weight it more heavily in their AI training. And so then when somebody prompts them on, hey, which CRM software should I use? And the thing about AI prompts are also much longer. We've all seen that like traditional SEO search are like 3 words. You might just Google like best CRM software, because we all learned, I think, with Google search, more words confuse Google. Whereas now the beauty of a prompt in an LLM, you can be as long as you want, and you could say, hey, what's the best CRM for my barber shop in Boulder, Colorado? You can get very specific, and then the LLMs actually give very specific answers. But to train it on that, if you actually are serving barbershops in Boulder, Colorado, you want that customer to put that in their own words in a review, and then gets trained on. So also the more review content you have from real users, it's all training to answer prompts essentially. And that's where we see the value in G2. Like I said, you could do it for free, but it is one of the best ways to train the AIs and make sure you get mentioned when users are prompting related to your relevant topics. And one cool thing about AI discovery versus search, I mean, the downside, everyone's getting less clicks. Less people click through on AI than on Google on the AI citations, but also they convert 9 times higher. So when you do get a click, because that buyer has done a lot more research on the LLM, they've done longer prompts, they've done multiple prompts, as we all do, right? AIs are great for learning about any topic, including which software you might want to buy. And so the buyer is much more informed, so much further down the funnel. And so I think that is critical. And I do remember I was actually around my first startup, Big Machines, when really Google SEO was just taking off. And actually, I remember this was probably about 2004. I was building my first company, Big Machines. And I remember one of my sales reps was like, hey, Godard, you should try Google Ads. 2004, I was skeptical. I'm like, oh, that's just for consumers. But I'm like, hey, but I might as well try it, and bought like CPQ software. And then back then it was actually still pretty easy. You could win easily because people were just discovering Google. And maybe LLMs are more that way. I mean, I think in tech, we're all onto it, but I still think you can get, probably some edge, especially over some bigger incumbents, by doing it faster. And I would say, obviously, G2, but you could also get in on Reddit conversations. And Pete, I think now also Reddit, they have official brand pages, and you have to do it in like a transparent way. But I would actually encourage that as well. If people are talking about your software, or you could even see discussions with some of your users, have them ask some authentic questions on Reddit. But I think, getting into those online conversations are all great ways to increase your AI visibility and, ultimately have more buyers discover you through AI. And like I said, as a long tail solution, it's actually probably better than SEO was. In most startups, we are long tail, right? You want to pick some problem in some vertical, solve it better than any of the big incumbents. And so I do think it's very promising for entrepreneurs now to build brand with AEO.
So
in demand, I should say. Build brand in demand.
And what I said about G2, and again, I deeply believe this. It's like when you're a startup, and everybody in this room, the greatest thing it can do for you is someone who does research. It makes you look way bigger than you are.
True.
It seems to me if an LLM, if you're the 20th most cited source overall, and I'm bigger on G2 in every way than all of my competitors, then the LLM's going to think that. And the LLM will refer me above the guy who's got far less reviews with far less detail. Well, I can't imagine that it's any other way than that. Like this, like
you have more of the LLM's attention.
Totally. Yeah.
I remember the seminal paper written by Google like 2017 on Transformer, right? Is all about attention. But it's like a human mind, right? But you have its attention, because if it's read more about your solution than other solutions, you're going to be top of mind, right? For that LLM brain, You're going to have its attention. And therefore, yes, it's going to mention you more when it's prompted on relevant topics. So it's, yeah, I think in that sense, tremendous opportunity for and startups. Like I said, I mean, the one advantage of startup is always speed, right? Before all the big incumbent vendors figure this out, it'll probably be a while. So, but you got to go quick. This AI stuff, it changes every day, and I think there's a nice opportunity.
I think
So
so.
I'm curious about kind of more tactical steps about you. And you alluded to some. So if someone is to go on the mission of being more recommended and talked about by LLMs, what do those steps look like? Does part of it look like going to like a SEMrush or seeing what the top cited sources are and then making sure that they are relevant and prominent within those sources? Is there also like let me start with that question.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. We actually have a whole category now on G2 on AEO tools. Answer engine optimization tools, so you can go there. And SEMrush is actually ranked number one. So, and obviously they also come out of the old, I shouldn't say old, but the SEO game. And now I think SEMrush and the others are also offering AEO tools. And then there are some new startups, like we've also partnered with Profound. Actually ranked number 2 in that G2 category. But Profound, they started about a year ago, got some funding from Sequoia. They're probably the startup leader in this world of AEO. And they also provide analytic tooling. And so you could obviously go directly to them. If you're already using something like SEMrush, they now have AI tools as well. And I would say the other cool thing, we have also embedded it on G2. So on your G2 profile, the vendor backend we call my G2, but in my G2, you can also see your profile and analytics because we want to be very transparent around in the categories you're in, how is also G2 influencing your AEO rankings and make everyone smarter about it. But I would certainly encourage everyone to kind of find an AEO tool. And then the other key part is, you have to get your content engine going. And like I said, I think the best thing is I would have a Reddit strategy. How do you get in on discussions on Reddit? I'd have a strategy for G2. How do you get in reviews? G2 also now we do FAQs. Partly, obviously, we always had them, but now we're invigorating them even more and you can seed them. You could have users seed FAQs. And how do your real FAQs, right? What are your customers, buyers asking? What are they trying to learn about right before they buy your product? And then obviously, if you can seed some answers from your users, the FAQs on G2, that's another way to train. And even content on YouTube, and putting out more video, more content. And it has to be highly educational content. But the cool thing is now the LLMs also will train on YouTube, especially like Gemini. Obviously, Google owns YouTube and so trains on their properties. So I think, you have to get more content. And like I said, I think what we're seeing, user-generated content will perform better. That could also be like customer case study videos, etc. But like talking about your real use cases, how they're using your software, how they're training problems with it. Because then when the next person's prompting a question related to the use case, you crush. If you have your real user-generated content out there across multiple channels, then odds are the LLM is going to refer to you and your answer, because you've got more of its attention on that topic than anyone else.
Yeah, that's interesting. I also the Reddit thing too is like, I mean, you mentioned getting into the conversations. I obviously agree with that. Of course, there are Reddit moderators, so just make sure you understand the restrictions of a certain subreddit before you get in. And
You
then
got
there's
to be
other, like you said,
authentic, right? Because you can get flamed or blocked quickly.
yeah,
So you can't do it in a fake way, but I think there's an authentic way to do it, right? And obviously identify yourself as a vendor and even Reddit now, they've created brand pages for B2B companies, and because also Reddit's realizing, we're also partnering with them. They're also realizing, wow, there's probably a big opportunity for them in B2B marketing. And obviously they've been all kinds of conversations, but they're also recognizing, kind of like LinkedIn did, right? Like enterprise B2B, it's also a great marketing opportunity. So they're also trying to make it a little easier for brands to get involved in the conversations.
yeah. I just think it's amazing that you can. I mean, I know there's some private Reddit channels, but like for the most part, they're all public. There's really, really specific channels for people who with different interests. And you could find pretty much any buyer group that you wanted based on a subreddit. And even if you're not looking to get into the conversation just yet, see what they're talking about, see what their problems are, like just see what tools they're using. And it's all, like you said, very authentic, real conversation, people looking for genuine information and answers, and people giving genuine information and answers. And that's just I just think it's the most genuine, authentic communication platform that's public that's available right now. It just doesn't and I think partly because it's anonymous, right? LinkedIn, Instagram, all these profiles, you're like a public facing thing. Everybody on Reddit is is anonymous, and I just think it's created this very unique thing. So I did.
Can we ask the audience, does anybody have one of these guerrilla Reddit strategies right now? Yes or no? Looks like Brian does. So what I wanted to ask is, while people are responding to that, hello audience, anybody have a guerrilla? Give me a yes or give me a no. Anybody have a guerrilla Reddit strategy right now? Oh,
I
right.
tried it. It didn't work, but I tried it.
For RB2B or something else?
No, it's for ship science.
For ship science? Okay. And then follow-up question is, anybody willing to share what that guerrilla Reddit strategy is? And then back to Godard. So what do you mean? Okay, so let me ask this question in a little bit of a long form way. So like, if my workflow for getting G2 reviews is I take somebody through my onboarding, and then once they're fully activated and they see my wow moment, I hit them right then and say, by the way, leave us a review. We'll give you $25 Amazon card. Like, I'm using Intercom. Like, that's pretty straightforward. What is the actual way to, like, what are the steps to seeding a conversation on Reddit about your brand in an authentic way? Like, how would you, in your user flow, do that?
Yeah, and honestly, like I'm personally less of a Reddit expert than I am a G2 expert, so, and actually I might refer to Pete to that, or a couple of you.
Okay.
But my point was more, I think that the number one AEO training is Reddit. And like I said, I'm not an expert in myself. I know our marketing teams are getting into it. And as Pete said, you have to respect their rules, but I'm not sure I have like the best detailed tips and tricks on Reddit.
Right.
Yeah, I was basically going the software ship science helps e-commerce businesses lower their shipping costs. I was going through the e-commerce subreddit, and when people had FedEx and UPS questions, I would answer them, and then like probably one out of every, it was more than one out of every 10, or less than one out of every 10, like one out of every 15, there would be an opportunity to drop ship science, and then my profile said like, founder of Ship Science or something, which I wasn't, but it was kind of our company, thing. I don't think we didn't get anybody from it, and it was a pretty time consuming process. And maybe it just wasn't the time or whatever. But and this also was pre AI also, so
Yeah.
that also helps or affects that. But yeah, just my 2 cents. Well, I'm curious. So I want to kind of get into more of like this idea of people doing research differently. So G2 and previously Capterra kind of opened this world where you could do research within just that platform instead of having to scroll through 10 different blog posts comparing different articles, all of which were written by the different competitors, and sort of like parsing out that way. Then when the sort of like the G2s of the world came out, and I mean, really now G2, you can kind of do your research within there, but it's still a little, it's not as robust as say asking an LLM. So really my question is, so like, I mean, how do you see B2B sales cycles changing when an AI agent is the one doing, either that like vendor shortlisting, the feature comparison? Do you see this like SDR role completely changing because of the way people are doing research? I'm kind of curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, my thoughts would be, I do think buyers will be more informed, thanks to using AI, because AI is good at going across multiple sources, so it can aggregate insights from G2, Capterra, other sites. It kind of inherently does that by training on them. So I do think the buyer can get more of their questions answered, just by the AI. So I do think, when SDRs, BDRs come in, it'll be further down the funnel, and they probably have to be even more expert, because the basic kind of FAQs are now so easy to get answered through Gemini or ChatGPT. I think that the buyer will likely have already done that. We are also building a new AI experience on G2 called G2 AI. And because I think you're right, our sites, and we have like, I mentioned AEO software, we have like your top 10 list. But then if you want to start comparing, obviously we have compares, but they're just kind of like side by side. Right now, you can also ask the G2 AI agent. And we actually allow you to build your own canvas. And that's something you may have seen in ChatGPT. we can create a collaborative work canvas in ChatGPT on any topic, but on G2 specifically, you can kind of build your RFP and your compare and even share it with your colleagues. And obviously that pulls in all the information from G2 as well as it's built on top of ChatGPT. So all the information that's available kind of on the internet, if you will. So you can much more quickly as a buyer get to a bespoke compare. And then I think what's interesting, like I said, they'll be further down the funnel. And G2, we're also trying to even drive more direct conversion. Because in our G2 AI agent can even say, hey, if we can see in the conversation, the AI conversation, this buyer is probably ready to just buy, we can even make an offer on behalf of a vendor. Like, hey, do you want to just sign up for the starter edition for $19 a month? And I think then when they go to the vendor side, I think same thing's happening. You probably saw Qualified with their Piper agent. They were just acquired by Salesforce. They were also working on a inbound SDR agent. And I do think, and we're actually piloting that ourselves at G2. I think those inbound agents are getting better and better. So I do believe a lot of the inbound now will be handled, more by AI, BDR, SDR. And I think the more creative BDRs, SDR, like we're doing at G2 is like, hey, focus on our large enterprise accounts and do creative outreach. Yeah, because the reality is like some of our biggest customers at G2 are companies like Salesforce, IBM, SAP. And there, as you know, you have to talk to way more than one person. You have to build relationships with the whole buying committee. So now we're focusing our BDRs, ADR, SDRs to actually partner with our enterprise reps, moving them up market and be like, hey, help drive more conversations, more relationships in those big accounts. But I think there's less of this simple inbound, especially like qualify one SMB buyer. I honestly think AI agents can start to do that better and better. And we all know they're also adding voice, and we're also piloting actually with OneMind. They have a whole sales agent that can even help drive conversion beyond qualification. Again, this is more targeted at the digital SMB segment. And so that's kind of the trend I'm seeing at G2. I think the digital SMB will become more and more AI, and frankly, those buyers probably prefer that. That's probably most of us as founders, like founders, CEOs, like we like doing our own research, right? And we may probably just buy something. We don't necessarily have to want to talk to a human. And I think the humans we're seeing, hey, they move up market in the complex enterprises where you need to build many relationships, multi-thread, all of that. So that's, I think, what I'm seeing in the world of BDRs, SDRs, as well as sales.
So sorry,
Yeah, no, good news for the people who sell into the SMB, I guess. We're going to be able to do it with a very lean staff.
Yeah, well, I think, and a lot of us probably are more, I think it's been, even before AI, right? It was kind of more like product-led growth. And I think AI just makes that a lot easier, right? Because where product-led growth often broke down, like they did have a couple of questions, where they couldn't quite self-serve and they bounced. Now you can drop AI agents in there. And like I said, that's something we're not piloting with the OneMind agent, but like then there can be a virtual seller that can kind of address those key questions, nudge them, when they're getting stuck. So but I think, like I said, most founders probably like kind of being more product led, especially to serve SMBs. And I think that opportunity now is there.
Yeah, well, our B2B is doing that. Rob over at our B2B runs the sales engine on the front end and then the support engine on the back, and most of that is handled by AI. I mean, that business, the way and the leanness and the profitability that it's able to run today would not be possible. I don't want to shun it, but I don't think it would be possible.
3 years ago, it would have been totally impossible.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
No, and I think you're right. Also on the support side, we're also piloting another agent there, kind of on top of Salesforce with Forethought. But the idea, same thing, right? Like where we can, and I think we're getting about 86% success deflecting cases with an agent. And honestly, I think the reason people love that is also the customer prefers it. Because we have global customers, right? Global users at G2, and now we answer them 24/7, 365. And then, of course, the 14,
they won't, right? Like
any language. Yeah, obviously it speaks Hindi, it speaks Mandarin, it speaks Japanese, German, French, English, so it's actually a better end user experience. And of course, we still have a workflow for the 14% of cases that either require human empathy or are truly more complex, require human knowledge and support. Like those still turn into support tickets in Salesforce that we'll have the human follow up on. But honestly, also, I think it's more exciting for our support team because now, because like the simple cases, like I forgot my login or whatever, like nobody enjoys addressing those anyway, right? And so I think yeah, but it's an exciting time where I think a lot of founders can go further. And people are talking about who's going to be the first one-person unicorn. Maybe it's somebody on this Zoom, any of you.
Raise your hand and tell us who's going to be the first one-man unicorn in the audience. Who is it going to be? It's going to be one of you.
And maybe it'll be a one woman. Yes,
one woman.
exactly.
There we go.
One woman.
That's
and I think, yeah, maybe I don't think anyone's done the one person, but I think we've all heard stories of like 20 person, or like our investors excel, their investor in Cursor. And I was here about my board meetings, it's like, and I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but it's like, oh, they scaled like 300 million ARR with like 100 people or so.
Something nuts like that.
Yeah. It's showing the possibilities. And honestly, in that sense, I'm kind of jealous of you earlier stage entrepreneurs. So like I said, G2, we've been around a little bit over a decade. So now we're grafting AI onto it, and I think we're doing it pretty well, but still, obviously you all are starting quote unquote AI first. And so, yeah, you probably won't even hire a lot of these functions, right? You'll just let agents do those jobs and save the humans for, the innovative and empathy work.
Yeah. Can I ask a question about the very beginning, Godard? So like, I'm sure some people in the audience are putting together marketplace businesses. I never have, but they strike me as incredibly complex in the very early stages. How did you find both sides of the market? Like, how did you, it was 10 years ago, so obviously it's not going to apply, but maybe some of the concepts still apply. Like, how did you put this two-sided marketplace together in the beginning when it was G2 Crowd, when no one had ever heard of that? Like, what can you just walk us through, like, what was the first 12 months like in terms of, getting both sides of this thing going?
Yeah, no, thanks, Ed. I'm glad you remember G2 Crowd. I don't know how many people do. That was our original name. And the funny side story about that is we actually wanted to call it G2, but at the beginning we couldn't get the G2.com URL. It was owned by a big firm, WPP, huge agency. And so we had to wait till our Series C. And I remember then we spent, I think, $750,000 to acquire the URL, but not something we could do till our Series C. So anyway, but it was very hard to build that G2 Crowd branded marketplace. And G2 is honestly the first marketplace I've built. All the other companies I built are SaaS. And honestly, I'd say building a SaaS company is easier. Not that it's easy, but in SaaS, at least you can kind of win one customer at a time, right? As long as you deliver positive ROI to that one customer, odds are you can convince them to buy. Whereas in a marketplace, until you have the buyers don't want to come until you have enough content about sellers. The sellers certainly don't want to be there until you have a big audience of buyers. And how do you overcome that cold start? And we actually did. I remember we studied Yelp and and we actually called G2 a Yelp for software at the beginning, or G2 Crowd. And I remember one of the smart things Yelp did also was very hard to get restaurant reviews and to kind of get a restaurant marketplace spinning. And I remember reading Jeremy, their founder, he was very kind, did lots of blogs, interviews. And I think he also shared, hey, what they just did San Francisco first. Obviously, eventually Yelp got to every city in the world, but they just said, hey, they just had to focus on one city. And obviously they're based there. And then they also said it took them quite a while to unlock the motivation of people to write reviews. Because I think their idea from the beginning for Yelp was, hey, let's do local reviews. Great idea. We'll have local people do authentic reviews of local restaurant shops. And that'll be really helpful local guide. But then the problem they also had is like they started it and then like nobody's writing reviews. And then eventually in San Francisco, they found this group eventually called the Yelp Elite of like wannabe restaurant critics, foodies that just love going out to restaurants. Obviously, San Francisco has many great restaurants, but they also love being critics. And they found, wow, once they found these Yelp Elite, they would write like 30 paragraph, 6-page reviews on Yelp, whereas most other people wouldn't write one at all. And so then they created this whole Yelp Elite. They'd throw parties for them in San Francisco, get them all together. And so they kind of developed this model. They got San Francisco going and then got San Francisco past the tipping point where there's enough critical content of reviews that buyers who came to Yelp were like, wow, this is amazing, right? This is better. I remember the Zagat's Guide. I'm really old, used to be paper printed. Like when I started my first company in 2000, .com boom, that was a holiday gift of choice. You'd hand somebody the paper Zagat's Guide to San Francisco or New York. And then obviously Yelp came along, blew that up. And that really inspired us because we kind of saw the Gartner Magic Quadrant report. That was like the Zagat's Guide, that piece of paper published every 2 years. Here's your guide to this market. And obviously we said, wow, if we can do real time like Yelp. But anyway, so G2, we kind of said, okay, there's no way we can do the whole software industry at once. Because overcoming that cold start would be impossible. So we said, let's just pick one category. And we just picked CRM software. And that was even my first company, Big Machines. We were in the CRM world. We were a CPQ company. We were partnered with Salesforce, with Oracle, Siebel back in the day. And so we knew something about CRM, and we said, okay, let's just do CRM. So our launch strategy was also, we just got the smallest booth at Dreamforce, because we knew there were a lot of Salesforce users, CRM users there. And we were just handing out $5 Starbucks card to like, hey, please write a review. And that was kind of our version of getting the hobby restaurant critics.
Yeah.
And we just got enough reviews on CRM software. But honestly, even that took about a year just to nail that one category, because I remember after we did that launch in San Francisco, that's kind of cool. Got about 1,000 reviews of CRM softwares. But then we got back to our office, and I remember like looking at Google Analytics. It was like a couple of weeks after and actually the launch was kind of euphoric. We like sprinted to Dreamforce. We got these reviews. You look at Google Analytics, there was like one person on our website. Like, how Google has a real time, what they call it now anyway. One. We're back in our office. And then I remember like a second person popped up. We were excited. Like we just doubled our traffic. And I was like looking at it. My co-founder's like, oh, it's in Vienna, Austria. I'm like, oh yeah, that's where my dad is. So then honestly, like it took about a year, because the other thing we realized, not only do we have to go get reviews, and we had to optimize at that time for Google, SEO, write blogs, and then we got one category at a tipping point. And then we actually got a couple of customers, because I remember our first customer also at G2 was this little startup called Workbooks, CRM company out of the UK that frankly nobody had heard of. But then once, they weren't yet in the Gartner report. And so then once they saw it, they're like, wow, can we license this? We want to use it in our marketing. And we said, great. And then a little after that, actually Salesforce came and they said, oh, wow, we'd even be interested in this. We're like, oh, everyone already knows about you. But they're like, no, there's a big SMB segment shopping online. And so then we realized, okay, that works. But it was really hard. And actually it was so hard, Adam, I quit. I quit.
What?
Yeah. I don't know if you know this story, but like 2 years in, it was going really slow.
I don't know the story.
Yeah. And, but I never quit entirely, but I moved myself to the board. I made my co-founder, Tim, our product co-founder, Tim Handorf. You might've met Tim. I made him the CEO. So I'm like, this is too slow. And I'm like, my expertise more after building my first company and we sold it to Oracle. I'm like, I like this scale revenue. I'm like, this thing, it barely has any revenue. It's going to take forever. So anyway, I went to go build SteelBrick in parallel. I stayed on the board, and then and we were quickly acquired by Salesforce, within like 2 years. And then I spent a couple of years integrating in Salesforce. And then during that time, Tim figured it out. He and our other co-founder, Mike Wheeler and Mark Myers, right? They figured it out, and they were very proud of people. They grounded, and they got it to like now all of a sudden 50 categories were working. And all of a sudden we were doing a few million in revenue. Mm-hmm. And then we actually also got an inbound call from Excel.
Man, that's amazing though, that like 50 categories working is only a few million in revenue. And now you're over 100. That is bananas.
Yeah. Now we're up to over like 2,000 categories. And obviously now it's easier to spin up a new category like AEO, because now we're known, right? So now, and I remember that talking to the Profound founder, James, and, Profound, I think is only a year and a half old. And like I said, but they've grown very fast. And I'm like, hey, how about we create an AEO category on G2? He's like, that's great. And I remember doing that for other startups like Gong. Obviously Gong today, big company, but I remember I met Amit in San Francisco in 2016 in one of the early SaaSters. And that was when SaaSter was up in the city. But anyway, I remember meeting Amit and like, I'm like, this is interesting. And then I also met Roy, the founder of Chorus. We're like, hey, how about we create this conversational intelligence category? And then obviously they both built, I think, kind of unicorns off that. And so it's exciting now. We kind of have a playbook for creating a new category, and it's easier because we have 2,000 others and people kind of know the playbook. And I will say to any founders, maybe one question for you: how many of you are planning on creating categories? And if you don't mind dropping in the Zoom, like in the chat, like what category you're trying to create. Of course, also very.
We did a whole app.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Continue.
Conversational outbound. That's a good one.
That was me.
Oh yeah.
I wanted an AI native LinkedIn outreach tool that creates pipeline conversationally instead of through a waterboarding and on a decision tree.
Yeah. But anyway, those of you that are interested, like we also like doing that. Obviously, and I'll say this to Adam, I would say to everyone, you can't have a category of one because that's not interesting to a buyer.
Yeah.
But usually we say, hey, once you have 5 to 10 players, and obviously, we're confident it's going to grow, then that can be a great time to also start a category on G2.
So are you for category creation? We had somebody who wrote a book on category creation, did category creation. his big takeaway after that show was don't create a category. That was his
It
advice to
was
the audience.
Anthony Canada, by the way. You
It
probably
was Anthony Canada. That's right.
Well, yes. Obviously, his claim to fame was Gainsight, where they did create a category, right?
Mhm.
Customer success. And then, but I know he's done a couple more since.
Yeah.
And it can be hard. And I would say to me, like, Pete, honestly, what I advise is like, I would first surf an existing category, to get enough momentum. And we did this in CPQ software a couple times. And we actually helped create that category, but big machines had almost killed me because it took us like 9 or 10 years till it was like a good category. So I've seen the side of being too early in a category, but then our second company, Steelbrick, we're like, oh, it's just CPQ made simple. We just like kind of made the category bigger. And then at some point, right before acquired by Salesforce, we're like, let's make it bigger. We said, hey, let's create a quote to cash category that includes CPQ. We bought a billing company. But that's usually what I recommend because a problem, like starting a brand new category from day one, nobody's looking for it, right? So if you can, like I said, ride an adjacent category, differentiate there, and then you gain the momentum and the money, and the strength to then go build a new one. That's kind of my my quick take. Obviously, it's nuanced. It depends, but that's my quick thought on it.
Well, I appreciate a few things. One, the story about the early days, because I think like if I didn't know you or G2 and just heard that story in isolation, I wouldn't know if you succeeded or failed. And I think there's something very beautiful about that because we've all been in those positions where like those early days are like a freaking grind and you're full of doubt and questioning in your head. And to see you talk about G2 Crowd as it was called, and now I see you're wearing a shirt of the GAI. You could have never predicted that this would be the route, right? It would be impossible. So I just think it's really valuable to hear those. I always love hearing those stories, and I've been a fan of G2 for so long and a user for so long. So I think yours is just all the more special.
By the way, to add on to that, especially if you ended the story with "and I quit."
Yeah.
Yeah, I did quit G2, and I am eternally grateful to my co-founder Tim Andorf because without him, it would have never worked.
Yeah,
and I think Adam and Pete, you guys are similar too, right? You guys got multiple companies spinning, and then it's like, hey, which one do you make your day job, right?
Yeah. So what did they do that made it work? Was there like 3 to 5 things that like when you left didn't exist that were like the magic sauce that made it work?
Well, one, I think, like I said, I'm more of like the business builder, and honestly, I'm not that deep in product.
Mhm.
And it really required intense product focus. Because actually, we were 5 co-founders. The 2 of us that quit were Matt Gorniak, he's like our revenue co-founder, and I was like, I'd say like the company builder, I'm more like money raiser, people hirer, but I'm not super deep in product, which was Tim. He's our product leader. And then we had our design co-founder, Mark, and our engineering CTO co-founder, Mike. They kept grinding because it became a product optimization. And I honestly think what they really nailed over a couple of years was the SEO.
Mm.
And that's what really drove it. Because once we started winning on like CRM reviews, best CRM software, and obviously that's just one category, and they made that work for 50 categories.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it was like, oh, wow, this is a scalable platform. And then I was lucky they allowed me to come back because then we could raise money and scale. And that's probably more the stuff that I'm good at.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Was there like a tipping point in terms of number of categories? Because like, I think we've all heard and probably agree with the startup advice of like pick a really small niche and like own that, be the best for a very small pocket of players, and then bubble out once you've sort of dominated that market. I'm curious because like I can see where let's say you're at 50 categories and you're owning you're number one in CRM reviews and say email marketing and some of these really like I guess just across the board dominant SaaS tools. Did the snowball effect start to kick in at a certain point, or maybe when a certain category was brought in that just made it never super easy, I hesitate to say that, but like reduced a lot of friction to get those next categories?
Yeah, I think, and we did do CRM and related, and you're right, email marketing, and obviously you told your story about competing with MailChimp. That was actually one of our first 3. Then I remember like e-signatures.
Oh.
And so we tried to pick stuff that's fairly horizontal for buyers. Almost every industry is buying, and somehow related to CRM. And so I think the 50 first were all kind of in the world of sales and MarTech. And then I think once we were able to tip that, and the good thing about sales and MarTech, also every software company has a CRO, has a CMO, has salespeople, has marketing people. So then they had something we could relate to, because even like once we're going to restaurant software, which we did eventually with like Toast and everyone, at least we could be like to their CMO, by the way, you're probably buying email marketing. Let me show you how you can compare Salesforce Marketing Cloud and MailChimp and, responses, et cetera. So then that gave us relevant content where anyone in software could get the vision, because everyone in software sales and marketing uses sales and MarTech. And I don't think we predicted that in advance, but kind of looking back, probably once we kind of tipped sales and MarTech, with about 50 categories, then from there we were able to go to almost any software category.
That's awesome. I want to end we got 10 minutes left. You are doing something that, I will never be in the position of running as big of a company as you do. I don't think I'd want to. Yeah, I know. But I'm over here with a one-man business, and I kind of like that. But not a one-man unicorn, but like a one-man horse. That's kind of where I'm at.
Work for you, Pete?
Like AI agents?
Yeah.
Oh man, I use V0 and GPT and some other tools like obsessively. The level of work I could deliver to my clients now is pretty insane, especially for the price that I can charge, or that they get to pay rather, because it's a really good deal for them. I started it in July. We're early on. I'll do an episode on that in a couple months. But so you're running this massive org. You're a multi-time founder. I've seen this thing about these peak I want to ask about sort of your leadership style, because I just think it is, you run into people issues, like the issues within a company become people issues, I think, way quicker than anyone expects. Like once you have like a dozen people, like the interactions between those people and how they're working together and how you're also like getting them to buy into your collective vision becomes so important so quickly. And I think at a much smaller scale than any of us expect. Then you get to your size, and it's like I can't even fathom the amount of coordination that, and sort of like buy-in that's required to do that. So I saw this concept of these peak values that you talk about. I'm curious kind of that framework and how that shows up in your management style, in G2 strategy. I would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. And maybe I'll go back to the beginning, what inspired Peak. Well, there was actually this entrepreneur, Chip Conley. I don't know if you ever heard of Chip. He actually wrote a book called Peak. And right around the time when we were starting G2 Crowd, I remember I actually met Chip at a Stanford entrepreneur kind of alumni reunion. And I was kind of thinking about my next thing. And he actually wrote a book, Peak, talking about how he said great companies get their mojo from Maslow. And he based a book on Maslow's hierarchy of need. And I remember, and he actually built a hotel chain in San Francisco called Joie de Vivre, a really cool boutique hotel chain that ultimately was successful. But I remember he also told the story how he almost failed, especially after the financial crisis, like hit the West Coast, and all of a sudden all hotels were empty, but how he survived that. And he built this peak culture, and he describes it as, for employees, the Maslow hierarchy of need at the base level is obviously compensation. Like if you're going to hire somebody, you have to pay them a fair wage and make sure they can take care of themselves, their family and friends. He's like, but that's just a basic level. He said the next level of the peak pyramid for an employee is that you give them recognition. You recognize their unique gifts, their talents, they're recognized for the unique contributions to the world. But he said the ultimate in employees, if they really find meaning in their work, they really almost have like a spiritual connection to the purpose, the vision of the company. And then they'll truly, be evangelists for your company, take great care of your customers. And he wrote a whole playbook about how do you do that. And he also had a customer pyramid. It kind of said the same thing. Like the basic thing for a customer is like, hey, they renew. You know what I mean? Like your product works. They keep buying. That's great. But he also said the ultimate thing for customers is truly you make them evangelists. And, maybe I think of like the Apple iPhone. I also remember like the first one I saw was like probably like 2007 or 8. When did Steve Jobs launch it? And I remember like the first one I saw was like our sales engineer, Art Carlucci. And he's a very techie guy, right? He'd always buy all the new gadgets. This is a company, big machines. And anyway, Art was like, this thing's amazing. And I looked at it. I'm like, Art, it's a toy. I love my BlackBerry. But Art's like, you're wrong. Like, this is going to be, the future of computing. And I didn't buy it right away, but he was a clear evangelist for Apple's products. In that case, the iPhone. Obviously, Art was right. I was wrong. It took me a couple of years to realize it, but I think that's the other thing on the peak. And so we kind of took that when we were starting the company. Actually, co-founders, we all read the book, and then we decided to make it our own cultural mantra. And we also made it a mnemonic for our values, where we said the P is performance, the E is entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial spirit, the A is authenticity, the K is kindness. And also because we found as we scaled, now we do have, several hundred employees. Like, how do you get them all to remember what really matters? And the other idea of peak, now we've also turned into a metaphor for being ambitious, because, G2, I still want to build a public scale company. I've never done that as an entrepreneur. So that's kind of our collective peak. We truly want to be the trusted source of insights in the age of AI for software buyers all around the world. So we still have a long way to go to reach our peak as a company. But then also each employee, like, what's your next peak? If we're hiring a BDR, like, I want to become an enterprise seller. Great. Can we align those paths? Or if you're a junior engineer, like, hey, I want to become a CTO one day. So can we align their personal peak path with our company peak path? And that's what we aim to do. And so we're all about peak. And but it's just great to have, I think, a cultural mnemonic that everyone remembers, aligns to, and that I remind people of all the time. We do our peak awards every month at our all hands, and we have our peak professional of the year. And of course, I like mountain peaks too. So we're all in on peaks.
I was going to ask, are you in Boulder? You mentioned
I am.
Boulder earlier. Okay.
I moved here during the pandemic because I do love mountain peaks and climbing them, skiing, uphill skiing, downhill skiing. And anyway, then when the pandemic and everyone went remote, because I was like in the Bay Area, I'm like, oh, I have to be here. In 2020, everyone felt like that. I have to be here for work. And then the pandemic, I'm like, okay, we're going to move even closer to the mountains. And my family and
There
I
you
love
go.
it.
That's great. Well, hey, I moved during the pandemic too, from Los Angeles to Denver. I live in Wheat Ridge, Colorado now, close to
Oh,
Golden.
nice.
Yeah,
We're
so
almost
just
neighbors, so we should get a
almost
coffee,
there.
Pete.
I'm in. I'll email you.
Since you don't have employees, you might be lonely.
I got my dog.
I moved 2 weeks ago. I moved 2 weeks ago from Austin, Texas to Aspen.
Wow, you're in the mountains too. And I heard you have more snow down there than we do up here.
There is some snow. The week I got here, there were 2 epic powder days, which was such a reward. And Aspen's north facing has been freezing cold, so the mountain's still fine. But it's just, this is my dream, and I just can't believe it's happening.
That's awesome. No, it sounds like we all love the mountain peaks too.
Yeah,
Hey,
it seems like we do.
everyone goes to Colorado, but it doesn't seem like anyone leaves. So I guess
Brian's been in Boulder for 15 years, Godard. In the
Wow.
we have a few Colorado people in here that tune in, which is we have a very global audience. Probably some people from Vienna. Well, hey, this has been a great episode. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your Tuesday, especially after a long weekend, to chat with us. Folks, the episode will go live on YouTube later this week. I dropped the link in. I will do it again. Godard, where can people find out about you? Are you a LinkedIn active guy?
I am an active LinkedIn guy. So
There we
certainly
go.
feel free to connect. You will need my email, and it's not hard to guess, but godard@g2.com. And
guys, don't email them.
Yeah, I prefer
No,
you
but
can,
that's just-
LinkedIn.
that's
You
just
can even
exactly
email
my-
me. Now, honestly, I love hearing from entrepreneurs. Obviously, link in with me, email me. And I know many of you have feedback, ideas, how to make G2 better. And I definitely, as Adam said at the beginning, like we've done for our B2B and many of his brands, his companies, we want to help you build that brand and then the demand. So reach out. Look forward to hearing from you. And like I said, Pete, Adam, maybe we all can get a coffee or a ski day in the mountains.
I would love to. I would absolutely love to. I will
Yeah.
travel
I'm in.
anywhere you guys want to go. So
All right.
We'll start that thread.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
Godard, thank you so much. I just admire what you've done so much. I love talking to people who are farther along the journey than me. You tell your story about how you went from 1 to 10 to 100. I'm sitting here in my head going, cool, I'm at 30. I can be at 100 someday. I just think
I
it's so
bet
helpful.
you will be.
Yeah, I think it's so helpful for us as founders to just realize that you weren't always where you are today. And like to hear those stories, like we went to Dreamforce, bought the smallest booth, handed people $5 Starbucks cards, saw one person on the website, and I quit. right? Like,
Yeah,
it doesn't get much more bleak than that.
true.
I mean, like, it really doesn't. And now this thing's a unicorn. Everybody knows about it. And, you're just helping people in this unbelievable way, which, by the way, I think goes unappreciated still, which is why, I wanted to say so much about it at the beginning of the show. So thanks for joining us. Yeah, I mean, I really just appreciate the conversation we had. It was great.
Likewise. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Pete. And like I said, look forward to hearing the many of you, my entrepreneur friends. I always feel like we're brethren because, as Adam said, we all go through these near failure. We all go through this torture. And but one day, I think when we stay at it, I think we can all find our way to a peak.
Indeed. And by the way, next week, I think most of you know I started making YouTube videos 3 or 4 weeks ago with this guy Samu. I had a couple hit over the holidays, like 30,000 views or whatever, which is big for YouTube for this B2B niche content we make. Samu's coming on describing his process, why it's working for me, and how you can do the same thing. So, will be an interesting episode.
Heck yeah. Well, hey,
right.
Thanks for tuning in, Godard. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. We will see you next week.
Doing it live. See you later.
Take care.
Always. Bye.
Bye.